Howdy, howdy. Naughty, naughty here. And, wait, actually, give me just a second. Alright, that's much better. Oh, and in case you're confused, look, I'm an adorable little guy now. I move and everything. Well, as much as a PNG can move. Now, today, I guess what I'm about to do is not going to be all that strange. And fortunately, the advantage of having my friends as my fans is that most of you already know what's going on. It was requested that the next thing I do is review Helluva Boss and elaborate on my thoughts of the series as a whole. And, okay, I can definitely do that. Now, I will go ahead and say that as a whole, I don't hate the series. In fact, I quite like certain aspects of it, so if it seems like I'm nitpicking or I hold certain standards a bit too high, it's because I genuinely believe that the show can meet those standards because it either has before or because it almost has. Now, the way this will go is I jot down some notes on my thoughts last night, and I'm going to read my notes, and if they need to be elaborated on or expanded upon, then I will do so. Now, let's see here. My thoughts on Helluva Boss. I'm going to try to refrain from some animation comments, as everyone knows errors are riddled everywhere, and I won't have much to add one way or another in most cases. The pilot, it was something. It was random humor, definitely something inspired by Family Guy. It got a couple laughs out of me, but one could definitely tell it had a low budget with how often voice actors played different characters, animation notwithstanding. 3 out of 5, very mildly, goodness gracious, sorry, very middle of the road. Up next would be Season 1, Episode 1, Murder Family. This episode establishes that the crew are quite dysfunctional, but they at least get the job done. Like the pilot, this episode establishes that Stolas is a greedy man who only lusts for Blitz, which will be important later. Moxie and Millie are married. Moxie is a gun guy, but compassionate. Millie is a physical fighter and loves Moxie, and Blitz is an all-rounder and loves both a bit too much. 3.5 out of 5. Season 1, Episode 2, Lululand. This establishes that Stolas was the parent. Stella was neglectful, at least at times. Stella was mad that she was cheated on for an imp. Stolas is horny for the imp and is actually very bratty and selfish, which the previous episodes did admittedly touch on. Mammon has good lawyers. RoboFizz is great. Blitz has a past and it involves Fizz. The Arskoatia are powerful, and overall it was a decently funny episode, 4 out of 5. Oh, goodness gracious. This is going to take a while. Let's lightning round some episodes. Spring Broken. Verasica is great. The episode was pretty good. Overall, 4 out of 5. I did not like the I'm Vortex portion. And that's going to be because did they not tell the voice actor how to say it? Did they give the voice actors contradicting instruction? I'm confused as to how or why that portion was greenlit. I mean, all it does, because Luna didn't say her name wrong, and she didn't say it in a weird way. She nervously said, I'm Luna. Like, in that context, it kind of makes Vortex just look like a jerk, as he just mocks her for no reason when the rest of the series, whether it be this episode or episode 8, shows that Vortex is a stand-up guy. I think this is an easy fix, by the way. Just have him re-record the line. Simple as that. And let's see here. Overall, not a lot to say. I won't have a lot to say about a lot of the episodes, as it's been a couple of months since I've last seen them. Season 1, Episode 4, Cherub. It was pretty funny, but the antagonists were kind of bland. 3 out of 5. Season 1, Episode 5, The Harvest Moon Festival. This episode starts with some birdie lusting. Stolas is still quite flirtatious and bratty with Blitz. The episode also introduces a cursed moon festival, which is pretty interesting. Stryker is also introduced, and he's great in the episode. I loved Sweet Victory, the threat he posed, and his cowboy aesthetic. I'm disappointed that the episode was Moxie-centric, but for now that's okay. As we speak, Millie is just the violent lover, though. 4.3 out of 5. Season 1, Episode 6, Truth Seekers. This one wasn't bad. It had good animation at times. The dorks aren't great antagonists, although I enjoyed the dynamic between Blitz and Moxie, and I felt the Luna and Millie part was a bit lacking, but not bad. 3.7 out of 5. Fortunately, the dorks did get a couple chuckles out of me. Season 1, Episode 7, Aussies. Fantastic. As close to perfection as Helluva Boss will get, if not for the shift in Stolas' character. He went from bratty man to love-struck. Minor thing at this point, but I don't enjoy the episode acting like Stolas has always loved him the whole time, because he didn't. These songs and other portions of the episode definitely made up for it though. 4.5 out of 5. And this is another easy fix. Simply draft another version of the script and see if you can make sure it stays consistent with what the series has shown Stolas to do so far. I'm not entirely against a love-struck Stolas. In fact, that would be interesting. Just transition a bit more from bratty man-child to love-struck and forlorning. Oh, goodness gracious. Sorry about that. Season 1, Episode 8, Queen Bee. Right off the bat, 4 out of 5. It's a very fun episode, although I'm starting to sense a pattern. Why does the embodiment of gluttony discourage gluttony? People theorize it's because the vibe of people in the party mess with batches of Beelzejuice, but this isn't stated. In my opinion, details like this should always be confirmed or at least hinted towards. Otherwise, it's just pretty poor writing, and the excuses and theories that people come up with kind of come off as copium and like they're kind of pulling details from thin air. I understand that there are little background details that show, hey, look, this is why. But in my opinion, this is an easy fix. Either have Vortex be the one to be like, hey, you outdid Beelzebub for a minute, how about you stop? Or have B take a minute to be like, hey, so you're messing with the vibe of my next batch, how about you just take a minute? Something like that, and it could have been much better. And let's see. And in case I didn't say it already, the rest of the episode and the songs made up for it though. As, oh my goodness, every once in a while I still get cotton candy stuck in my head. Now, up next, Season 2, Episode 1, The Circus. Right off the bat, 1.5 out of 5. What's the point of making a hundreds of years old demon suddenly the same age as Blitz and making them both just about 30? And the reason I have an issue with this is because a lot of these demons, like Stolas and the Ars Goetia in general, are based on the Lesser Key of Solomon and the Ars Goetia in that book. And that book was written hundreds of years ago. And the reason I personally have a little bit of an issue with this sudden age thing is that it adds nothing. It only serves to detract from the story and removes some of the grandiose nature that came with Stolas. In fact, that's something a lot of Season 2 seems to want to do. Why make them meet during childhood, but only once? I feel like it could have been better if they met at least a few times, because Stolas was very clearly a very lonely child, so what would stop Paimon from going back to the circus and being like, "Hey, poor person, here's some money, give me your child for a minute." And if it's because he noticed, then why did Stolas remember him so fondly? Ooh, buddy. Why suddenly make Stolas sad owl who's been abused? Why is Stella bad for abusing Stolas, but Beelzebub is not bad for the way the Hound orphanages are run? And before you tell me it's because other people run the Hound orphanages, do remember the signature on the contract in Blitz's phone from episode 7 for the Luna adoption? That's Beelzebub's signature. That tells me she oversees those orphanages and dictates how they're run. So the show making Beelzebub seem like a good person despite that? Kind of strange, because in my opinion that is much worse than what Stella does to Stolas. I don't have many thoughts on Stella's sudden cementation on being a flat evil, as that's fine. It does seem to be weird that, now that I think about it, female characters in the show don't tend to be written very well, though. And when I say that, I mean, to this point, Blitz and Moxie have had a couple of them-centered episodes, especially Blitz, and that does make some sense, I guess. Stolas has had an episode or two, an episode and a half-ish, focused on him specifically. And Luna and Millie, if you're going to be generous, Luna has had one episode, and Millie has had none. And I'm not counting Truth Seekers solely because Truth Seekers doesn't really add or establish anything about their characters. If anything, it sort of detracts, because previous episodes do establish that Luna and Millie do not like each other, and yet in Truth Seekers, they work together just fine. The banter is Luna calling Millie old, and that, in my opinion, does them a bit of a disservice. The episode could have been quite a bit better, not that it was bad already. Oh, wait, sorry, I had already touched on that episode. Either way, my point is, the show seems to be allergic to taking time for Millie and women. But that could just be being harsh. Let's see here. Oh, goodness gracious. Season 2, Episode 2, Seeing Stars. I'm going to keep this quick. 2 out of 5. Goodness gracious, this episode was almost good. Just a lot of small things. Whether it be Stolas and Blitz constantly being caught up in something and not giving a lot of effort in trying to stop or do much about it, going with the flow for most part, to Luna's speech to Octavia. The reason I have an issue with Luna's speech to Octavia is because her speech is about how dads can be flawed sometimes, about how dads aren't perfect and they can mess up, when this episode and ones like it previously, except for the pilot, show that Blitz has not messed up, not in any egregious or comparable manner, and that's not good. And I say that's not good solely because it entirely detracts from Luna's point in the speech. It just makes Luna look even more like a bad daughter, because effectively she is. That speech, my goodness. And on top of that, before I move on, it only makes it worse when right after saying, oh, dads, they mess up sometimes, but overall you should give yours another chance, right after she kicks Blitz in the nuts. Hilarious. Character development. Whoa. Now up next is Season 2, Episode 3, X's and the O-O-O's, they want me. Quickie again. 2 out of 5. It's not a Millie episode, which at this point is poor distribution of character focus, as she's still just the violent lover. Chaz is also very annoying. I've been told it's purposeful, and to that I say, that's bad. You can make a parody and jokingly make an annoying character, but as South Park found out with the Jackovosaurs, putting 5 handfuls of salt in a cake on purpose still makes a very bad cake. When you make characters like that, you have to dial it back at least a bit. There's a line, and that it's a fine line between what's funny and what's obnoxious. If you had dialed Chaz back a bit, and I'd imagine it's been a couple of months, but if you wrote a few things just a touch differently, he could have been hilarious. But he just, goodness gracious. And then that ending message saying the episode is dedicated to Chazwick Thurman, because we all know what that means. That is not a very good episode dedicated to the actor you based that name on, especially with whom you gave the name, the parody name in the show. I don't know much about the actor himself, but he was a good guy. I don't understand why you would give a parody version of his name to such an obnoxious character. When, if I recall correctly, I don't think the actor himself was very obnoxious, especially since he died from cancer. I'm going to go ahead and move on before this becomes sad. Season 2, Episode 4, Western Energy. Right off the bat, 2 out of 5. The Striker shift, goodness gracious. Conceptually, Striker having a major facade could have been cool. Instead, in execution, they fused Striker and Chaz. The statue also makes very little sense in context of who Striker really is in the episode even. So, my headcanon is, and will forever remain, that the mariachi band commissioned it. And, oh, dear Lord or Lords above, that line, he can be hurt. It was very painful to listen to, not because I was distraught or emotionally put off by the line, but because it serves no purpose, actually. I'm going to just rip the band-aid off. Blitz, at this point, was a bodyguard and protected Stolas. If I recall correctly, this took place in Lululand and the Harvest Moon Festival. And I think you could have made a point with this line if it were just Lululand. However, the Harvest Moon Festival goes out of its way to confirm that even Blitz is aware that specific weapons can harm Stolas, especially since he did technically save Stolas' life. And, oh, goodness gracious, I can't with some of these moments. And why did they decide not to have Luna speak? I know there's going to be someone that knows about or will comment on Luna's voice actors or voice actresses' trouble in real life, and I'm going to go ahead and say no, that is unfortunately not the case. I shouldn't say unfortunately, the event was quite sad, but no, they had planned on it. They had planned on making Luna not speak for almost the whole season. And I just have to wonder why. What is the point? It baffles me. I don't get it. Now I'm going to go ahead and move on. Season 2, Episode 5, Unhappy Campers. Quickie, 2 out of 5. Moxie was bad in this episode and brought it very much down. I did, however, enjoy getting something from Millie Development, and a couple of the songs were good. Not all of them, but a couple. Season 2, Episode 6. Oops. Let's see. 3 out of 5. Fizz goes out, almost fights Blitz, they get kidnapped, they escape. It's a simple episode and sort of fixes the striker problem. Crimson isn't a great antagonist in execution though, not so far at least, and I will go ahead and give him a bit more time to grow on me before I determine that they made a mistake with Crimson. I will go ahead and say now, I do not like that he has the same voice actor as Moxie. Hot take, I know, but Richard Horvitz, in my opinion, doesn't really do a great job of having that intimidation factor vocally. It just sounds like a mafia man impression. And now for the final episode, or at least the most recent as of this review. Season 2, Episode 7, Mammon's Magnificent Mid-Season Special. Oh, dear Lord, or Lords, this will be one in which I have my hot takes. Honestly, for me, this is a 3 out of 5. Mammon overall isn't very evil. In fact, why make them demons in hell if most of them aren't very evil? Why make Fizz another gay sad boy? I like the songs, I like the animation in this episode, but the plot is very much getting tiresome at this point. When I say that, I mean that the most egregious thing Mammon seems to do is overwork Fizz, but the episode almost acts like he's a worse Valentino. If the episode took a darker turn with Mammon, or elaborated further on how he's such a bad man, it'd be quite a bit better. And I'm going to elaborate. I mean, in a plot like this, you don't want Mammon to just overwork Fizz, to just overstretch Fizz. I mean, the fact that Fizz had free time at all is probably an issue. Mammon, in my opinion, the worst things he said to Fizz were a couple of, "oh, you're getting fat" comments. I think he should have gone a lot further. Been more than just a toxic boss, but taken even more of an advantage of how Fizz and demons like him look up to Mammon. Like maybe things along the lines of, "you want to be like me, don't you, champ? Well, you never will, but you can come close." Maybe that's not quite it, but I'm also not a writer. In my opinion, if the Stalker had been more than a typical Redditor, the plot taking a situation like that more seriously and showing what those people can actually do, it'd be better. And that was disappointing for me because with the Stalker, they didn't take advantage of the fact that he is a demon and that demons could simply be worse about this sort of thing than typical humans. And human Stalkers are horrifying. Imagine the horror of a hard to kill or defeat man stalking you for years around every turn and corner. And much worse, in a world in which law enforcement is non-existent. Someone that will know everything about you and will leak every detail they get. This could have been a horror episode. I know, that's not the point. In fact, the Stalker is very much a minor thing, but there are some things they could have done. Overall, I tried to keep these quick. If I need to elaborate or explain in further depth, absolutely tell me to do so. I can probably make a decently long video on most of my opinions here. Now, before I can let this video get to finishing, I need to talk about the merch and character representation distribution. Like, as an example, why Sally May, a character in the entire series for a few seconds, has 10 times as much merch as Stryker. For those that didn't look at many of the merch drops, you can notice that for this most recent Valentine's Day run, they went so far as to include a lot of characters, including some sexualized poses for Sally May, Mammon, strangely enough, Blitz, and so on. But for some reason, they don't do Stryker merch. And when I say that they don't do a whole lot of Stryker merch, I mean to say that if you look for Stryker on the Shark Robot store, there will be only a handful of results. And the worst part is, that's just kind of... why is Stryker the one getting the short end of the stick? He's been prominent in a few episodes now, but characters like Sally May, who has been in for 5 seconds, I cannot hit home that hard enough. If you look at the merch store, you would think Sally May is another main character, and that Stryker has been in for like as many episodes as Mammon, because the amount of merch they have is sort of equivalent, I think. I'm not going to say that Stryker has as much merch as Mammon. I do think that Stryker has more, but when you introduce new characters and you want to make merch like the Valentine's Day merch, why not just add characters? And it's not going to be for a lack of longing amongst the fans, as if you look for a few seconds, fans want Stryker merch because Stryker is a very cool character. Why does Stryker have hardly any merch? It's ridiculous. And there's probably going to be someone in the comments that points out some other character. but I think Stryker is going to be the only one I touch on just because Stryker is the only one I noticed this with, and it's strange. Especially when you get to the merch that sexualizes their characters. Sally Mae gets plenty of it, Blitz gets plenty of it, Millie, Moxie, Charlie, Vaggie. But Stryker, you know, cowboys are a pretty popular search term in the hub, right? I don't get it. Either way, I suppose this was more of a small rant to get this off of my chest than much towards criticism of the series as a whole. And speaking of rants, I suppose I did almost forget to discuss why I put in my title as I diss the gay bird. I can't stand Stolas. I do suppose this portion is just going to be another minor rant. However, the direction that they are taking Stolas in, simply put, is kind of bad. At least when going off of what most of the first season goes out of its way to establish compared to what most of the second season is going out of its way to establish. Especially since you can still see remnants of what the series originally wanted. Originally, it looks like the series wanted Stolas to be a bratty, immature, upper-class person who simply lusted after the lowers. Whereas right now, the series is portraying Stolas as sad gay boy who has been abused by Stella the whole time. And I wouldn't mind it so much if not for the fact that the only thing they've shown of the abuse, or even towards hints of such abuse in the first season, would be Stella throwing an imp at Stolas. However, at that time, Stella had just figured out that Stolas had cheated on her with an imp. I'd throw an imp at him too. I guess I should elaborate a bit further on why I don't like this character change very much. It's because you are trying to take someone who has gone beyond the point of immorality, of badness, and you are trying to just freebie redeem him. I don't mind a redemption, or I guess in this case, an excuse, a shift towards wanting to be better. But this is not something you just do, especially since you've had multiple episodes stating how Stolas originally is. This is not something that should just snap and take place. You want this is something that you don't make abrupt, you transition slowly. If I were a writer and people were super insistent on sad, gay, abused owl, I would have probably done something since the beginning. Otherwise, if it was something that sort of just happened last minute, then I would have started in Season 1, Episode 7, Aussies. Instead of making him a generally very sad gay boy, though. Like, same Gabriella sort of gay boy. I would have had him ponder. I think it would have been better if Stolas at that point had stayed somewhat bratty, but had realized, with all he had done and the consequences he must live with, he is alone, and he must go through that loneliness until he makes up for the sins he has done. I guess that's my issue. Consequences. There aren't consequences for what Stolas has done, aside from what Stella is doing. And that's bad. In my opinion, I think the plot should really have put more emphasis on what Stolas has done and the depravity, the follow-up, and what should happen. like it hinted it would do with Ozzy's, instead of focusing on making him an abused, sad, empathetic gay boy. I'm sorry about the rant. I suppose I should proceed to the end, instead of ranting about a small part of the series as a whole. And speaking of the series as a whole, it's not bad. In my opinion, I do think it will eventually get better. So I will keep watching, and I do hope that y'all keep watching. And I'm saying that about Helluva Boss specifically, not my channel. I don't care if you watch my channel much. I think I can confidently give the series as a whole a 3 out of 5. It's not bad. And despite how often they insist on devaluing the power of a swear, the dialogue isn't egregious, and naturally, as I'm sure we all know, the animation, while there are some errors, can definitely be fantastic at times. Just remember that fight scene during Truth Seekers, as well as those musical numbers. Most of the musical numbers, if not almost all of them, during the Mammoth's Magnificent Mid-Season Special, and a lot of other portions. While I hope the plot gets better, I will definitely keep my eyes on this show. And if y'all want me to simply say something about episodes as they come out, definitely don't hesitate to ask me to. Now, I won't keep you. Duty calls, and I hope you sleep well. Goodbye, dear listener.